أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا وإن الله لمع المحسنين قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المجاهد من جاهد نفسه وحافظ من هاجر ما نهى الله عنه أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Alhamdulillah, my brothers, to remain in masjid after having performed the congregational prayer, which is 27 times more rewarding than offering prayer outside of the masjid, whether it's in your home or any other place. Some rewards are there. And to remain in masjid and to assemble and have some worry and concern about this deen is also very rewarding. It's more rewarding than a person offering 60 or 70 years of nafal ibadah. Just sitting in the masjid, remaining in the masjid, and having some worry and concern about this deen. How can deen come into my life? 100% deen, how can it come into my life? How can Islam come back into existence again to the same level or to the same extent that it was left by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Raja Jahal called him back, what was the level of the deen? What was the level of Islam in the lives of the Muslims at that time? Allah Jahal, he had commanded the Muslims, the believers, to enter into the fold of Islam completely. This was a commandment of Allah. Sahaba Ikram radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, they brought 100% deen into their lives. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this world, this physical world, 100% deen was in the lives of the people. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, he labeled or described this era as Khayr al-Qurun. This was the first time in the history of mankind that a prophet had been sent and his following had brought into their lives 100% of that which was revealed to him. It came into the lives of all of these people, radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And those were the days in which it was a unique society. The whole world was in a state of total darkness. And after 23 years of effort, this was the greatest achievement that any person, any prophet could have achieved. That is, for his message to be accepted by his following. And not only eventually accepted, but it came into existence as a reality in the lives of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once the deen is established, the next obligation is to maintain that. 23 years of a prophet is equal to 2,300 years. Ulama Ikram say that the effort of a prophet is equal to 100 years. So it was as if the Prophet ﷺ had strove for 2,300 years. The effort of a prophet is not like the effort of normal people. The sacrifice of the Prophet ﷺ was unparalleled. 23 years of effort, everything that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ had come into existence in the lives of the people. It was not in books in those days. Holy Quran had not been compiled as a book, but it was in the lives of the people. Someone asked Aisha radiallahu anha in regards to the behavior and the character of the Prophet ﷺ. And they even requested, could you please describe something unique in regards to the behavior, the character of the Prophet ﷺ. And her reply was, radiallahu anha, that everything about the Prophet ﷺ was unique. Everything. He was an embodiment of the entire Quran. He was an embodiment of 124,000 Anbiya alayhim salatu wasalam. So everything about him was unique. And the Sahaba Ikram radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, they patronized their lives after the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you saw a Sahaba, and his mannerism, his character, his devotion, his muamalat, muasharat, it was as if you seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They copied everything of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These described things about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will show you that they were very noteworthy about everything he did. Nothing was insignificant. Once Hazrat Muaz radiallahu anhu was describing a conversation that took place between himself and the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said that he was riding on the same animal. He was right behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, "Oh Muaz," and he said, "Yes, sir." Labbaik wa sa'aday. He said, "Do you know the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over his creation?" And his reply was, "Allah and his Prophet knows best." So, drawing the attention of Hazrat Muaz radiallahu anhu, he asked him again. The reply was the same. He asked him again the third time. The reply was the same. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this was his method. This is how he drew the attention of his audience. This is how he drew his attention of those people who were listening to bring out the importance of what was being said. Once he got his attention, that what he was about to say was very important, not to be forgotten. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says something just more or less, the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over his creation is that he should be worshipped. This is the haqq. This is the right of Allah. The right of Allah Jalaluhu is he should be worshipped by his creation. This is his right. He's the Khaliq. He's the Malik. He's the Raziq. He's the maintainer. He's the Rabb. It's his right that his attributes should be acknowledged by the creation. He's the Khaliq and the creation is Makhluq. He's the Raziq and the creation is Maruzuq. He's the Nasir and the creation is Mansur. He's the Malik. It's his right to be worshipped. In worship, ibadat is an Arabic word, and it means for one to voluntarily submit himself, to voluntarily surrender oneself completely to that being which is all powerful and almighty and possessing all the complete and absolute attributes, divine, unique, unparalleled. This is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he should be obeyed. Obedience. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Hazrat Muaz radiyallahu anhu, do you know the right of the servants of Allah? What is their rights over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Hazrat Muaz radiyallahu anhu gave the same reply. And the question was asked again for the second time. The same reply was given. Allah and His Prophet, they know best. This is teaching us that if we want to learn anything, the first thing we have to do is acknowledge the fact that we don't know anything. Here is the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is Sahib al-Wahi. He is receiving revelation directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via the archangel Jibreel alayhi salam. So what can we possibly know in comparison to what is being received by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, other than Allah and His Prophet know best? So they were the best students, and of course Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best ustad, was the best teacher. And the third time the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, and the same reply was given, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered the question himself, that the right of the creation over the Creator is that if he obeys the commandments of Allah and he submits and surrenders to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's his right to go to paradise. That's his haqq. If he obeys the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fulfills the right of Allah, fulfills the haqq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his right is to be granted the paradise. And success has been redefined now. وَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ أُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَقَدْ فَازَ. Success has been redefined now. Success is receiving the paradise. And failure is to be sentenced to the hellfire. If a man is saved from the hellfire and is honored with the paradise, he succeeded. And if it's contrary, then he's a failure. And this success and failure is eternal. So the Prophet ﷺ instilled these new values in Sahaba Ikram. So their effort was akhirah. And because the Sahaba Ikram radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in were the first people who received this revelation from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first recipients. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to train them. Had to train them and prepare them to do his work after his demise. And to train them in such a way that this training would continue into the day of Qiyamah. That not a decade, not a period in time would pass and the effort of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not exist. If there ever exists a period in time when the effort of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam becomes non-existent or is neglected, then this ummah will experience a lot of devastation, a lot of problems. And if they look at any other way to solve their problems, they will never solve their problems. Because for this Muslim, there's only one solution to the problem that he may face in this world and in the hereafter. That is this beautiful and complete deen brought by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once Hazrat Umar radiyallahu anhu, after the Muslims had seized They seized the fortress of the Jews and the Christians in Qudus, in Jerusalem. And the Christians, and the Jews, mostly Christians at that time, they decided to surrender to the Muslims. And there was no need to, there was no benefit in continuing fighting with the Muslims. Because they had analyzed the people who were in front of them and the people who they had expected. When they saw the rise of the Muslims, it was a known fact in those days. Something that just traveled, it became a rumor, that the Muslims had no real special qualities other than the fact that they were human beings just like they were. But there was some unseen power, there was some unseen connection that was with these people, and no one can defeat them. Irregardless of the numbers, irregardless of the circumstances, they were invincible. They barely had weapons. They barely had transport. But it was something divine that was supporting them. So to oppose these people, it was almost useless. That's how the word has spread it throughout the whole world. So when the Muslims seized the fortress, eventually the people, they surrendered. But they made a condition. The condition was that they would surrender only to the leader of the Muslims, Umar ibn Khattab. And in those days, the Christians were scriptural people. They used to go by scripture and not by doctrine. It's a big difference. So the description of the whole episode or the whole incident was supposed to have been in the Injil, described by Isa ibn Maryam, that it was going to come a time when people would come from the east. They would come from the Arabian Peninsula. And when they would have such qualities that they would have the divine help with them. And in this time, it would be impossible to defeat these people because of their qualities. And these are the qualities that brought the divine help. And no one can stand in front of them. So Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, he and Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, they had a similar appearance. They were stout, they're the same size. Even sometimes people mistaken when they spoke. So Hazrat Khalid radiallahu anhu, he went to represent the Amir al-Mu'mineen who was in Medina Munawwara, because they figured it's 1 month's journey to go to Medina and 1 month's journey to come back. So he figured, I'll represent the Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the siege on this fort, the surrendering, we can do this right here instead of waiting 2 months. So when they went to address the people, the leaders of the Christians, the Nasara, his name was not the same name. They said, your appearance is the same, but this person's name is Ayn, Meen, and Ra. Your name is Khalid. Bring us somebody who has the name, the appearance like yours, but the name has to be Ayn, Meen, and Ra. So they went and get Hazrat Amr bin Nasir radiallahu anhu. But he wasn't the same stoutness. His physical appearance was different. But it was Ayn, Meen, Ra was there, with the exception of the alif. So they said, name is same, but the appearance is different. So the Sahaba Ikram remained there, realized that we only have to call Hazrat Umar radiallahu. So they sent a message. That took 1 month. Hazrat Umar radiallahu, he replied. So with his servant, they took turns, and after 1 month, they reached Jerusalem. Meanwhile, that gave the people chance to observe the behavior of the Sahaba Ikram. They went back and forth from their camp into the masjid. And for 30 days, they went back and forth. And you see, they were different from us. They didn't have to have long talks. Because the Prophet ﷺ had made them 100% deen within their lives. And even the new Muslims, being in the company of those great people, their lives began to change. So the Emir of the Jama'at, what did he say? We're going and perform our 5 times daily salah. So do 2 things. Stay in zikr and keep your eyes down. Don't worry about what's over here, what's over there. Keep your eyes down and stand in remembrance of Allah. Because they were rijal. Rijal is la tulhihim tijaratun wa la bay'un an dhikrillah. The power of the remembrance of Allah, they had mastered that. The perception that Allah is watching them, they're being watched. They had reached the level of ihsan. And ta'budu Allah annaka tarah. Wa lam takun tarah innahu yaraq. Their lifestyle was not just in salat. Outside of salat, they had the level of belief that as if Allah was right in front of them. Or if not that Allah is watching them. That's the power or the effect of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every day they went back and forth to the masjid to perform their salah. 5 times daily salah. So now the people are saying, if these people are really the true people as described in the scripture, there's nothing that can tempt them. But they're still human beings. So they tried to tempt them. Because they studied. The weakness of these people would be 2 things. Money, dunya, madiyat, and the misappropriation of women. If we can get them involved in these 2 things, then the divine help that is with these people, it will be removed. They will be deprived. Back and forth they went to the masjid. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu is on his way. Took 1 month. Their eyes are down, and on both sides of the road, they make a schema, a plan to distract the Muslims. So everything is placed that can distract them. Even young virgin women, to distract them. Women and wealth. Mata'a dunya. Because their leader had given them instruction, keep your eyes down. Keep your eyes down. Stay in the remembrance of Allah. Remember Allah. Not just saying subhanallah, subhanallah, no. Contemplate upon the words of Allah. Contemplate upon the tahleel and tamheed and the ta'leel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His omnipresence. Bring that reality. You've been watched. You're going to be asked about your deeds and actions. Remember Allah, taqillah. Finally, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he reaches. The attempt to distract the Muslims, to divert the Muslims, to make them lose the divine help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had failed. 2 months of effort. Here comes Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala. When he reaches the camp of the Muslims, he notices that their apparel changed. They had some clothing on that looked like it was from that area. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he picked up some sand and he threw it at them. And he told, you only here for 2 months? Already you affected? And they said, sir, please, we have not been affected. They pulled back we have our clothes, the same dress as we left with. We just put these over because of the season, it's cold. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu gave them a small bayan. He said, "Lo natlubul izza." He said, "Inna kunna adalla nas." Inna kunna adalla nas. Nahnu qawmun asna Allahu bil Islam. Lo natlubul izza. لو نطلب العزة بدون أو بغير ما أعزنا الله أذلنا الله. We were a people who were debased. We were the lowest of the low. كنا ذل الناس. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated our nation. Allah ta'ala elevated us. He gave us Islam. If we try and acquire respect and honor by any other means other than Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will debase us. He rolled off. As he reached the fortress, him and his servant were taking turns on one animal. Because this transportation was the transportation of the government. He didn't waste money. They took one animal and both men took turns. Now his turn had ended. Just so happened that his turn ended when they were about to enter into the fortress to conclude the treaty, or to accept their surrender. So with his shoes over his shoulder, his pajamas, his pants rolled up, and with the strap of the animal in his hand, and with his servant on top of the camel, mud to his shins, his midcalf, turban to his back of his head, and he's walking through the mud, entering into the city. When the people saw this appearance, this entrance, they said, that's Umar ibn Khattab. This is the man who's written in our scriptures. We have to surrender to these people. 2 months of temptation. 2 months of trying to distract the Muslims. Failure. Because they followed the Amir. Their eyes were cast down, not to be distracted. And they were in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala, when he enters just as described by the scripture of the Jews and the Christians. And they gave him the key to Baitul Maqdis. And for 400 years, how many years? 400 years the Muslims made in Jerusalem. For 400 years. And the people paid them a jizya. And when the Muslims were not able to give protections to the people of Jerusalem, one time the deputation was being sent to Africa, to Egypt. So the whole battalion that was stationed there in Jerusalem had to be removed and sent to Africa. So the jizya of that year was returned back to those people. And that that battalion or regiment was sent onward to Africa, to Egypt. So my respected one in Islam, Sahaba Ikram, radiallahu ta'ala, they had brought 100% deen in their lives. They solved their problems through their ibadah. And the first fundamental of the deen, one pillar of is salah. They perfected their salah. They knew the difference between right and wrong, and they knew every tick of the clock, 24 hours in a day, they knew what the commandments of Allah was. They were constantly thoughtful of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah gives us simple things. We don't have to be rocket scientists to recognize the greatness of Allah. He tells us, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. You're with a camel all day long. You're in the desert. You're Arabs. Look at the camel. كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ. You wake up every day. You look up at the sky. كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ. It was all one thing at one time. Earth and sama. كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ. How it was elevated. Where are the pillars? Where are the strings and the ropes? Just look at the greatness of Allah. وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. Look at the mountains. Huge structures coming out of the ground. How was it that they haven't fallen all these years? كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. Look at the earth. At one time, huge giants walked upon the face of this earth. No problem for the earth. Allah showed us to look at His creation. Look around you. You don't need a telescope. You don't need to have a big telescope and look up in the sky. Look what you can see with your own naked eye. Look up there. Look at the sama. Look at the nujum. Look at the shams and the qamar. Look at the greatness of Allah. They perfected deen. Everything reminded them of Allah. So that remembrance of Allah kept them disciplined. It brought that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within them to obey the commandments of Allah. Only shown by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And a new society came into existence where a ummah came into existence. There was no such thing of this tribe, that tribe, this country, that country. They were all the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the same responsibility, the same obligation. You're khayr ummah. No other people that follow a prophet from before can be compared to you, because you have been given an obligation, the same obligation that was given to the prophets of before. You enjoy the good and forbidden the evil. And if you do these two things, your iman will be secured. So this appreciation of these ni'mas of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they strove to please Allah. And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had passed away, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam deputized Allah, فَلْيُبَلِّغُ وَالشَّاهِدْ مِنْكُمْ الْغَائِبَ. They were sent out into the world. And they left Medina to Munawwara, and they reached each and far looking corner of the world. China, 50 million Muslims. The Polynesian islands, called Indonesia, 300 million Muslims. All of the Far East, Africa, even the Americas, Islam reached. When the Columbus era had started in 1492, wherever they went, the colonialists, they saw Islam. Islam had already been there. So my respected for Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us here. We come from all parts of the world. Do you think Allah who sent us here just to eat, drink, and be merry? You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us here to be the slaves of the enemies of Islam? Allah didn't send us here for that. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam left Mecca, Dar al-Kufr, and he went to Medina, Dawat-e-Islam. And who was in Medina? The people embraced Islam. Hazrat Mus'ab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu, he says that after 1 year of Dawah and Tabligh in Medina, there was not one home in Medina where at least one person accepted Islam. By the time the Prophet ﷺ Sahaba Ikram made hijrah to Medina, it was an Islamic environment. Even the munafiqeen pretended to be Muslims. That's what munafiq is. Even there was non-believers who pretend to be Muslims. They fasted. They made salat. They read Quran. They went in jihad, pretending to be Muslim. So the atmosphere was so overwhelming that kufr cannot raise its head. It had to submit. That was a Dar Islam. The Prophet ﷺ did not leave Mecca and go to Rome. It's Dar al-Kufr. He didn't leave Mecca and go to Persia. It's Dar al-Kufr. But he sent the Sahaba Ikram to Habasha because the king was a righteous man. He was adil. So that means if you go there, you can be able to practice your Islam. But if you come to another part of the world and you can't make your Fajr in the morning, you can't make Dhuhr, you're missing your Jummah Salat. You look like the Christians and the Jews. Your children are leaving Islam. Your women are out in the street like these kafirs. This ain't the right place to be. In the wrong country. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't tell us to come to a place where we lose our Islam. Build mosques that's empty. The Christians, the seven-day Adventists, or the Jehovah's Witnesses, they can build a church in 7 days. They have engineers and constructed. In 7 days, they'll build a church. Well, they did that at the time of Ad and Thamud. They built big old structures. Nobody lived in them. Even the poor who didn't have a shelter, they would not even give them a space to live in. So they built tall buildings. They built all types of structures. They were masters in architectural structuring. They built buildings. But they build buildings here. But people are still homeless. So the buildings ain't no big thing. To put things inside the building, to fulfill the purpose of the building, that's an achievement. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lived in Medina to Munawwara, in Arizona and Medina, ain't that too much difference. But his masjid did not look like this. This is a ni'mah from Allah. And we have lights in the masjid. 9 years passed after Hijrah. 9 years passed after Hijrah, and there was no light in the masjid of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And as soon as we open up our masajid, the first thing we turn on is the light. But there was no light in the masjid of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There was no walls for people to lean up against like right now. There were dirt walls. If you leaned up against them, your white jubah would turn dirty. There was no carpet in the masjid of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There was dirt. There was no state-of-the-art roof. It was made out of leaves from the trees. And if it rained, the masjid floor got soaked with water and mud was there. And our blessed Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his blessed forehead would get mud on his forehead. Mud from his masjid. So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never saw any masjid like this. They'll talk about the masajids that they built. $2 million masjid there in New York City. 8 million. He never saw that in his life. He never prayed anything like that. If somebody wants to say it's a bid'ah, it's a ni'mah bid'ah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows we are weak. So we have carpets in our masjid. We have state-of-the-art, a structure. But the Prophet ﷺ predicted, he prophesied an era like this. Masajiduhum amiratun qarabun min al-huda. It'll come a time in history when their masjids will be the state of the art. Beautiful building, beautiful structure. But qarabun min al-huda. But they'll be void of guidance. People will come in, they'll be sinners, they'll leave the same way. Their lives won't change. Their lives won't change, and they will have no effect on the lives of the people who are around. Qarabun. And in the Western country where people don't, even the Christians don't go to church, the churches are empty. We've been affected by these people. Our masajids are empty and nobody cares. So my instructions on Islam, that's why this effort is going on. Because the problem today is not the kafir. The problem today is the Muslim. Allah Ta'ala has given us responsibility to practice and propagate this deen. And that's how we all became Muslims. If the Arabs had stayed in the Jazirah al-Arab, we all be kafirs today. They left their homes. They left their wives. They left their children. And were in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to propagate deen. But that's not all they did though. Because in Medina to Munawwara is Dawat-e-Islami. I mean the majority of the people were Muslims. And Jamaats left Medina. 125 Jamaats left Medina to Munawwara in 10 years. Or some ulama say 150. In 25 of those Jamaats, Nabi Sallallahu was in that Jamaat, those groups, they called it Ghazwa. Ghazwa means the Prophet Sallallahu took part. A Saraya is what the Prophet Sallallahu sent out. He would take part. He sent them out. He stayed behind. So Nabi Sallallahu sent out groups for the propagation of Islam, and he also participated. Sometimes he dispatched them, he stayed behind. So in the Dawah of Islam, what did they do? Did they just twirl their fingers like that? They taught the deen. They was taught deen. They was trained to pray in the masjid. Not in their homes. Women prayed in homes. So they tell their children they can't control their urine. They came with their mother. Children who don't need their mother anymore, they can come with their father in the masjid. 7 years. If they don't pray about 10 years, they can be penally punished. By the time they're about it, they're ready to take over their father's shop. They're ready to get married. Nowadays, you got these young boys around here not married. In America, not married, that's almost like suicide. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us over here to practice Islam and to be an example. One man was in our masjid Friday and he wanted to know about Islam. He was talking to us. His name was Chuck. And he came, he had another agenda, but anyway, he came and he was talking to himself. So he said, I want to know why the Muslims supposed to be peaceful religion. Why is it every time our country goes into a different Muslim country, why is it that so many Christians are getting killed? And this is supposed to be a peaceful religion. So I said, I don't know why. Why this happened, I don't know. But I know one thing. The problem today in the world is that there's no real Islam being practiced anywhere. If you saw true Islam, you wouldn't be sitting on that side. You'd be sitting on this side. You would be a Muslim today. If you saw Islam, it's like the people from before. When Islam came to them, from Egypt to Morocco, from Morocco to Mali, Mauritania, to North Africa, to the eastern part of Africa, from the Polynesian Islands to China, to Eastern Europe. When the people saw the real Muslims, It wasn't no hesitation. They embraced Islam. If you ever see the true Islam, you won't hesitate. You will be affected. No doubt about that. So whatever your complaint is today, our concern is that how can 100% of the deen that was left by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam be brought back into existence again? And the only way for to do that is we have to move in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to go right now to our Muslim brothers. Everybody works in this country. Majority of the people you with every day, they're not Muslims. You go to the store, they're not Muslims. In the neighborhoods here, most of them are not Muslims. So you with non-Muslims all day long. So don't tell me why you're not going to non-Muslims. You with Muslims, non-Muslims all day long. Our children go to school, they're with non-Muslims all day long. The Muslims have been exposed to non-believers the majority of the time. Why aren't they being affected by our life? Why are we changing? Why are we being affected by their lifestyle? And they're not affected by our life. There's something wrong with us, not them. It's supposed to be the opposite way around. That's how we became Muslims. So this effort is directed towards reviving Islam like it was in the time of the Prophet ﷺ in my life, in your life, and in the lives of all the Muslims throughout the entire world. If these non-believers and other Muslim brothers and sisters see the real Islam, they have to be affected. That's the nature of Islam. It's a reality. So for that, this is why we humbly request each and every individual to give some time. Give some time that Allah has given us for our own sake. To revive the deen in our lives and to remind all the Muslims wherever they are. But it takes some time. And to learn this effort or to be exposed to the proper environment, we're asking for 4 months. We're not asking for 5 years to become a bachelor or get your PhD. That's almost 20 years. Nobody's asking for that kind of time. 4 months. 4 months, if you divide 60 into 120, that's like 2 days every year. In 60 years to revive Islam in your life. Is that fair? That's not fair, brothers. But that's the program. Who's ready, brother? Inshallah.
It's about time. And when it got morning time, we started at 6. Look.